Let's talk about receipt management. My name is Paul Vasquez with Tax Lab. We help people save tens of thousands of dollars in taxes, and you can too. So we get a receipt. What do we do with it? Well, if it's business related, if your plan is to utilize that to reduce your taxes, then we need proper receipt management. Now, do you need your receipt to submit your taxes? Not exactly, but if the IRS comes a knocking, they're gonna ask for a receipt. Wait a minute, doesn't your bank also have that record? There is a record in your bank or your credit card statement, but rarely does that information provide what was actually purchased, which the IRS cares about. For example, if you're writing off your fuel expense on a vehicle, you're doing what they call actual expense and not mileage, and you're writing off your fuel expense, but then when you're buying fuel, you also buy a drink for yourself. Well, that drink may not be counted as a business expense. And so while if you see that at the bank record level, it might say, gas station and the expense. It's not going to say that you also bought a drink. And guess what? The IRS doesn't want to give you a business deduction for personal expenses. The taxpayers in general. So it was actually argued a while back in the 80s, and taxpayers argued that since they as W-2 earners don't get to write off their beverage when they go get gas for personal expenses, that you as a business owner shouldn't be allowed to take that drink as a business expense if you're writing off your fuel for business purposes. So really, that is the taxpayers saying, hey, we don't think it's fair that a business owner gets to write off personal expenses. They should just be allowed to write off business expenses. So if you don't like that rule, take it up with your neighbor because they kind of are the ones who ended up saying that they didn't think that was fair. But regardless, now the IRS wants to comply with what the people have deemed is important to the people, and so you might have to show that receipt. So let's look at how we should manage a receipt. So we have here a receipt from Kroger, and on this receipt, I ended up purchasing a air filter for the office. I rent an office just for tax season. This office is where I visit with clients. And so as part of this office, the owner did not put in a nice HEPA filter that is oh so important during the winter months. And so I went out and bought a filter for the office. This is an office expense. And so we've got these receipt details here. But now that we've got this receipt, what do we do next? So it's a good idea to utilize the back of this receipt. The front of these receipts, the ink, has a tendency to fade very quickly. So we're going to utilize the back of the receipt to add in some information. So I start out with the date. We need to know in which tax year, which month, which quarter does this expense apply to. Next, I want to put down the reference number on this receipt. I do this for a few reasons. Number one, if this was, say, an invoice from another company, I'd want to be able to reference this so I can show them that I have a receipt that I paid on that bill, that they've already issued me a receipt on that. If for some instance there was a question as to whether or not this receipt was true or not, having this reference number would allow me to go back to the vendor or the IRS to go back to the vendor and say, hey, we show that X&S certain business made a purchase at your location at this date, or your business at this date. Here is a reference number. So I like to include the reference number there. Not all these details are important for taxes per se, but they could help. Next, I want to include the vendor name on here. Who did I buy this from? This is important for me as a business owner to track where I'm spending my money. Second, if once again this receipt fades and there's a problem where they challenge whether or not I actually paid them the money I owe them, well, now I know which business this receipt applies to. And once again, if the IRS wanted to follow up on your purchase with the vendor, they have a way to do that. Next, I wrote down what I purchased. I purchased an office air filter, not a personal air filter. It's for the office and making sure my clients are well taken care of and that our staff's well taken care of. Office air filter, what it is, that helps our bookkeepers. If you're turning this over to a bookkeeper or if you're doing your own bookkeeping, this helps you realize what it was that you purchased. And guess what? If the IRS is challenging you, once again, you'll have an idea of what that business expense was. Now, this is how I'm going to categorize it for my business and my tax purposes. I'm going to categorize this as office expense. Now, if you don't know what to categorize it as, you might leave this section blank and just give it to your bookkeeper, your accountant to handle. Also, you're not the one who gets to decide this. This is your best guess as to how this should be. You definitely want to seek a professional who has experience in this area because in the end, it's the IRS that makes this decision. You're giving your best educated guess. You can give that to somebody who maybe is a bit more educated than you in this area, and they can do that for you. But the IRS actually has the final say. And so we want to make sure they don't question you, right? If it looks right, if you buy an office air filter and you and your accounting team has listed as an office expense, we want to reduce the IRS's ability to challenge it. If it looks right on its face, they're less likely to challenge it. But once again, you as the business owner get to try to schedule this. As a business owner, you want to know where you're spending your money, how you're spending your money, so you manage your business well. But when it comes to the IRS, you as the business owner don't actually get the final say as to whether or not this is a deductible expense. You're submitting it to them. You're making this claim. They can challenge it. We want to reduce the chances of that. We want to do all we can to put a good faith effort into doing this the right way. Lastly, you want to put the price. How much was on this receipt? Now, I'll often divide out the sales tax on this because there are a lot of counties and cities which will tax business owners on what they call business personal property tax. And some of them have a limit. They'll say $20, $25. If it's under that amount, then they won't charge it to you. They won't make you pay it on that item, right? So sometimes they give that limit. So sometimes it's good to separate out the tax on that, just so that way, if that knocks it below the price of that actual item, it might reduce your taxes by just dividing that up. Of course, both the cost of the item and the sales tax that was charged on that item are both going to be tax deductible to you as the final purchaser. And it kind of shows that you paid the sales tax on that you didn't buy this and then turn around to resell it and have to collect. Well, you might have to collect tax on that if you actually resold it, but this kind of goes some evidence to show that you paid the sales tax on that and that you didn't get it at wholesale. So that was my detailed explanation about receipt management. You want to maybe make some folders. I like to use envelopes so when people send me money requests and I'm paying my bills online, I can use the envelope as an envelope for that month. So I stuff everything in those envelopes by month. I can either then give that over to my bookkeeper, my accountant, my tax person, whomever is helping you manage that, and then keep it in your records for 7 to 11 years or forever. This is Paul Vasquez with Tax Lab. Go to lab.tax, click on Advisory Services, schedule your free 15-minute interview to see if our services are right for you.